Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here. You're in the Win Again Clubroom, and we have a fantastic event lined up for everybody tonight. I've got three fantastic, former student athletes who are now involved in student athlete development or have been in one way or another, and I'm really excited to have you all on board. So I'll start with Jason. Jason is the Associate Athletic Director for Student Services and Academics at Chicago State University. So that's Jason. Kate is Assistant Athletic Director of Women's Basketball at Appalachian State University. And Tommy down there is the Director of Student Athlete Development at University of Mount Olive. But what I want each of you to do, if you could, is fill in some of the blanks about your background and what got you to where you are. I'll start with Jason, if you could.
All right, great. Well, this is the end of my 14th year working in college athletics and student athlete academic support. I'm originally from Southwest Michigan, small little town called Water-of-Elite, about 2,000 people. I went to Central Michigan University on an academic scholarship, and I walked onto the baseball team. Had some Division III offers to play baseball, but chose to walk on at CMU and had a good experience there and learned about this field that it exists. And then I applied for jobs everywhere. And I think for those of you who might be on this call and you want to work in college athletics, I think when you start out, you can't be too narrow focused because there are only so many jobs. And you start out, apply everywhere is my advice always. And I applied everywhere and I kept track. Okay, here's where I've applied. Okay, I got this interview. Assessing my career as I've been in this for 14 years now and kind of looking at, okay, is this what I want to continue doing? And so kind of exploring there.
Kate, you're up next.
I played basketball at Wofford College, was there for 4 years. We weren't that great, but had a great time, met some of my best friends, and, still got a great education. My experience in terms of jumping in to coaching is not that profound. I wasn't done playing basketball. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And after graduation, I was like, you know what? I think I could play overseas. So decided to try my hand at professional basketball. Was over in Portugal for 3 short months, had ankle injury and didn't enjoy the rehab in Portugal. So decided to come back. Was trying to figure out and kind of like Jason said, like applying to every basketball job ever because I was just like, I got to find a way in. I'm not, if I can go play again, I want to do that. But I didn't love my overseas experience, being away from everybody for, and the internet and Zoom wasn't as, not to date myself, but as accessible as it was then. And so my head coach from Wofford made the connection to the head coach at Presbyterian, and I got hired for about $12,000 a year. And I did like 3 or 4 jobs as an assistant coach, but I was technically a Division I assistant. And then kind of jumped from there to operations, back to assistant, to recruiting coordinator, to back to now more operations. That's kind of hopefully a condensed version of my path.
But what's interesting is that you're considering leveraging all of that into business, and that's one of the things that I like to talk about, and I know we all like to talk about, especially when we're helping some of these student athletes, is, well, what are some of the things that they can use from their athletic background that can really help them succeed in business, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit, but that's fantastic to hear, Kate. Thanks so much. And Tommy, batting third.
Hey everyone, my name is Tommy, or you can call me Tommy Capers. I'm the Director of Student Athlete Development at Mount Olive University in North Carolina. So I'm on the newer professional, a young professional. I'm new to the game. I did track and field at one of the biggest D2 schools in the nation, Grand Valley State. 5-time All-American there. So I did my major undergrad was sport management. I always knew I wanted to stay in sports just because I just wanted to transcend the young leaders when I got older. After I finished my athletic career, I went straight into my master's in higher ed. And I finished that. And then I knew I wanted to go in athletics. So kind of like Jason, I was just applying to multiple facets because I did multiple internships in my undergrad in athletics. So I did one in operations. I did one with the student athlete development director at my school. With the rec, I was doing everything during my internship undergrad because I want to see the field and what I want to do. And one of those jobs I applied for was student athlete development. I wanted to help athletes with leadership development. And then I got that job straight through. Now I'm here. So it's a little short than everybody else because this is my first one. So
I love it though. You're well on your way. And look, the bottom line is that all three of you have had significant impact on student athletes in one way or another. And, I think that's a big reason why, we do the work that we do, is because when you have the ability to share your expertise and really make an impact on somebody so that they may be good at dribbling a basketball or playing baseball or running 400 meters, or whatever it is that you've been good at. But more importantly, it's really showing a student athlete what is their identity outside of their sport when the time comes. That's one of the things that I think a lot of athletes struggle with is they say, gee, I've been swimming my whole life. What else am I? I've been playing baseball my whole life. I've been playing basketball, football, skiing, whatever it is. And so, one of the things that I like to talk about is the whole notion that while you're competing, it's so important to have a secondary interest. Sometimes people label it as, well, you have to have your plan B in case plan A doesn't work out, or in case you suffer a career-ending injury, or in case blah, blah, blah. Well, an athlete doesn't want to hear about their plan B. They want to focus on plan A, which is to continue training and succeeding at your sport. So to me, if you instead craft it as a secondary interest, as something that you can really start being engaged in, whether it's photography or real estate or film or fashion or finance, whatever it might be, it's so important to start doing that. So with all that said, I'll start with you, Jason, real quick, and let's for the next sort of segments and so forth, try to keep your answers to sort of the 30-second to minute kind of thing max, just so we can make sure everybody has time to answer. But Jason, if you could jump in and just say, look, what are some of the things that you like to recommend to an athlete so that they can prepare for the next step?
I think start thinking about the different opportunities that might be out there. And I'm big on doing informational interviews with people and trying to, okay, this person has a job that sounds kind of cool. Well, let's try to get you connected with that person, ask for a 15 to 20 minute phone call or Zoom chat. And okay, how did you get to where you are? What advice would you have for me at this point? And I think that's something that can really drive a lot of, they can learn some things that are out there and start building their network too, which definitely pays off.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Great answer, Jason. How about yourself, Kate?
Let's see. I think for us, being in the coaching world, that we try to get our student athletes in. We develop a relationship with them so we know what their interests are outside of basketball before they come in. But then in that first year, we really try to make sure that they're settled and that they can kind of handle, academics, social life, and the adjustment to college athletics. From there, we try to do a bunch of personal growth and development with them, see what their interests are. And generally after they have, kind of transitioned and maybe halfway through first semester or whatever, they'll start reaching out to clubs or sororities so that they can kind of branch out there and grow their network that way. We also encourage them to do, internships on campus. We're kind of secluded. So in the summer, getting them to people and places that would benefit them with their majors.
I think it's fantastic. And I like how you, as you're saying, you're almost like you're pulling them in and talking to them about their secondary interests that early. I think that's fantastic. I think it's important for an athlete to realize that there is more to school life, college life than just their sport, their studies, and social. There's some, and the interest can be part of the social life too, which is great. Thanks for that, Kate. It was really good.
Sure.
And Tom?
I would say first, just always like just sitting and really getting to know yourself to develop your major purpose in life. I don't think like as student athletes, like you said, we just worry about the sport, then we're done. So like I would just encourage, and like the greatest athletes, and just reading books and doing research on people, they develop their definite purpose in life. And then for their own, you can write your goals down and then work with their action, because faith without works is dead. So I always just create that straight major purpose and plan in life, and then just try to follow it the best you can, because without that faith, without just the thought, you have to put the action towards it. So just really figuring out and thinking, taking the time to really think.
That's great. Now, a lot of times student athletes, and again, it could be amateur athletes, professional athletes, a lot of times they don't necessarily know what they bring to the table and how they can leverage the fact that they were an elite athlete into their next step, whatever it is, if it's in the world of business. I want each of you, if you could, to give me one thing that you can right off the bat say that an athlete brings to the table that a lot of times non-athletes don't have. Jason?
I think, dealing with failure, I think, because there are a lot of ups and downs, especially if you make it to the college level. I mean, little league and high school, maybe you dominate and you don't really face much adversity, but you get to that college level, Division I, Division II, Division III, doesn't matter. I think you're going to face adversity. You're going to face ups and downs. And baseball is a great example. I was a pitcher, but like hitters, if you hit 400, I mean, that, which is great, you're still making an out 6 out of every 10 times. So I think and it's public. Everybody, people are there in the stands. They see your stats online. So being able to handle and deal with that, I think, is something that is a unique opportunity. It's funny to say opportunity, but if you look at it that way, it can be advantageous going forward, handling adversity and dealing with failure. Excellent.
Good. Kate?
I think adaptability would be one, in terms of, they've got, as a student athlete, you need to be able to think on the fly. I forgot I had a test. We have a game. I'm late to this, being able to put yourself in different situations and thrive in it. And I think that, especially in game, things are going to happen that you might not be prepared for, but being able to adjust and to adapt to the situation and the circumstances is something you can really bring.
I like that. That's fantastic. Thank you. Tommy?
I'm glad we had different ones, because I was going to say going the extra mile, because successful athletes go the extra mile. They do those extra reps. They go watch film. They do those extra things to separate themselves. So transitioning that mentality to the workforce is perfect, because you want to get better at presenting. You go the extra mile and present more, go practice, read on your own, read out loud. So I just think that mentality of going the extra mile takes you to the next level.
That's really good. It's interesting. There's so many, I think anyway, underlying skills and capabilities, and it's the mindset. The athletic mindset is so important, but also the skill set. One of the other things I always like to talk about is that most athletes, including student athletes, are used to being on a stage. They're used to being in front of people performing. They're used to, whether it's even small interviews with a school newspaper, whatever it might be, but they're used to being out there. And in the world of business, that's so important, because most people that are non-athletes have not had that experience. And most people are pretty nervous. They don't want to be on a stage. They don't want to be presenting. They don't want to be, talking to other people. So that's something that a lot of times I believe athletes take for granted, and they don't realize that that's something that it's not easy to do. So there are a lot of different things. And I think it's so important that in the work that you all do, and anybody else out there that's involved with student athlete development, to really spend some time with your student athletes to show them all the different things that they have that they can leverage into the world of business. A lot of times they don't realize it. They don't, or they maybe, they downplay it, downsize it. So,
Mark, real quick, on that thought, a couple years ago at GCU, I had a week where in my meetings with students, I talked about that a lot in that, okay, looking in the future for job opportunities and transferable skills. I said, what do people say about athletes? Good teamwork, hard, have teamwork. They work hard. Some of those other things. I said, but you've had bad teammates, right? You've had teammates who don't work hard, right? Hey, this is an opportunity for you to really develop those teamwork skills and the work ethic and some of those other positive attributes. And then on a job interview, you can have these very specific stories and examples that you can point to about. It's not like, oh, I was a student athlete, so I'm a good team. I'm a good teammate, or I work hard. Well, you can say, well, specifically, I did this. We had this situation, and we worked together as a team. We were able to overcome this adversity or whatever it is. So I think that's an important thing that sometimes gets lost. Is like there are these positive assumptions, but not everybody really achieves that. But you have the opportunity by being a student athlete to really build those skills.
Absolutely. Well stated. And thanks for that. In thinking about the skills that student athletes can bring, and then, now let's talk a little bit about how do we get them to be out there more? So they're in school and they're performing their sport, but now it's time to really start preparing for life after their sport. How do they start meeting people? It's interesting. I don't want to sound like the old guy that says, oh, young people this, young people that, but I've noticed that younger people struggle a little bit more with face-to-face conversation, and they're more used to interacting via text or phone or whatever it might be, or even by video. And what are some of the things that, and I'm going to go backwards this time, and I'll start with Tommy. Tell me some of the advice you would give a student who needs to start meeting and getting to know and like growing their network, but meeting some people that may be 10, 15, 20 years older than them. Maybe they're a successful business person or a C-level person somewhere. How do you encourage them to get out there a little bit?
So nowadays, in this age, it's the easiest than it's ever before. Like we got LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have all these marketing tools, and now we have NIL now. So now you really have to market yourself to the best ability. So, and it's a want. You have to want to. If you don't, you won't. So basically just prepping, like Jason said, just prepping and interviewing, setting up these tools for them to practice with you, and just connecting and try this. If you see somebody on LinkedIn that's in a similar position, reach out, see, hey, can we have a phone call? Can we set up a Zoom talk? Or if you're in a local area, you can go up to them and just meet. So, it's self-explanatory, honestly, because we have all the tools. There's no excuses now.
But do you think they should be nervous about meeting other people? Like, in other words, I remember when I was in college and I was junior or senior, I was terrified. I was very intimidated by meeting somebody who was 40 years old and she was a managing director at a bank or something. And I was like, I don't even know what to say. And I didn't really have people back then that were, we didn't have LinkedIn, we didn't have computers, we didn't have oxygen, usual stuff back then. But how do you tell people, listen, don't worry about it. How can you give them confidence?
I'm just a straight up realist. So for me, it's life. Like you're going to meet new people. It's life. If you don't, like who hasn't met someone or been in an uncomfortable position? So it's about just being a realist and knowing that you have to have a growth mindset and just practicing that, whether that is reading books, listen to podcasts. You got to step out. If you're going in the real world, you have to.
That's great. Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, so I think a little bit of a different answer just in terms of working with student athletes directly. We do get to know them in the recruiting process, as I mentioned earlier. So we do get to have like a different level of communication with them in terms of, how do they feel comfortable communicating? What are some topics, that you can feel their hesitation on, or, do they get their parents on the phone with them and let the parents speak? So we kind of have an understanding of who they are when they come in. We've also started doing e-colors, which is like a personality, see kind of how they identify. So some we have a lot more outgoing ones, we have a lot more doers. And I think when we can understand how they operate, it's a little bit easier to direct. But we have we put our kids in situations where they need to host a recruit, so they need to be able to communicate with parents and the kid. with alumni, same situation. In academics, we encourage them, they're a little bit nervous at first as freshmen, and they're like, my professor won't do da 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 da. It's like, okay, well, go speak to them, let them know who you are. And here, I'll help you write an email, so that they can feel comfortable kind of bridging that gap. Because it is different. It is a little bit scary for them, especially when they're younger. And if they come to us with a problem that they can handle themselves, we try to give them the tools of like, hey, it's okay. People are going to ask for help. You can put yourself in that situation to go do that. And just making sure we do media training too with most of our team, just so that they're aware of,
That's
if
great.
they are interviewed, what's the right thing to say? How do you say it correctly? And not to be like staring at your shoes, mumbling. And then in practice, we also take time to kind of have like a circle where we allow them safe space to speak up, and we're like, okay, you need to talk a little bit louder so we can all hear you even though we're 3 feet away. So I think just trying to incorporate them into different situations where they have to develop some of those skills.
That's great training. That's so good. I'm so happy to hear that you guys do that, because it's so important. And I feel that sometimes that chunk right there gets left behind with some of the other things. And it's so, I think a lot of times our schools don't necessarily prepare everyone for the real world that's out there. They may educate them very well, but they don't necessarily give them some of the day-to-day stuff. So that's fantastic. Jason?
And at South Florida and GC, we did networking nights, and we got professionals from different fields to come in person. And I think I told you and Dahlia a few weeks ago about the one situation at USF. One of our defensive ends, who was really personable. I mean, he ended up playing for the Tampa Bay Arena football team. And I went to a game, and like they had him recorded on the big screen, going, "Come on, fans, let's go!" So he's really outgoing, personable, and so we thought he was just going to shine at this networking event.
Yeah.
And he's like in the corner, and we look, why is he over there? So we go over there, like, hey, what's going on? He's like, he's looking, I don't know what to say to these people. And so we're like, all right, we'll help you. We'll walk over. So we started introducing him to some of the professionals. And I think that's where we can, even a virtual setting, maybe almost be like the middle person to help bridge that gap a little bit and help them with, hey, let's set up a Zoom call with this person. If you want, I can be on there and kind of help ease the uncomfortable start of that conversation. And in the past, I had sports management majors who wanted to work like in Major League Baseball. And I had a former teammate who worked for the Tigers. He did corporate suite sales. I'm like, hey, let me get you in touch with Dan. I'd pull up his LinkedIn profile. Hey, so here's his background. Here's what he's done. Would you be interested in talking to him? Yeah, sure. And so a few of them actually did follow up and do that. But I think going forward with especially now with the Zoom setup, I think even taking it a step further with those students who might be a little intimidated by that, offering to kind of help buffer and ease that interaction is maybe a way to help them out. Well,
so that's fantastic. So one of the things that, and Tommy, you talked about this a few minutes ago about LinkedIn. I was shocked by one of the schools that I went to, I visited. They really didn't prepare their students for LinkedIn. They were talking more about some of the other platforms, and I was stunned because LinkedIn is, you said it a second ago, the low-hanging fruit. It is so easy to find people on LinkedIn who can absolutely change the course of your career. But what I also run across, there are some athletes, and it's not just student athletes, it's any athlete who sometimes they'll say, well, Mark, that's a platform for professionals and executives. So, I can't be on there. What can I possibly put on there? And obviously, in my mind, there are a lot of things that they can put on there, but it's less what you put on there, but it's more how you use the platform and who you engage with and who you invite to connect. And, I think the vast majority of users on LinkedIn are just that. They're users where they're just on. They're on LinkedIn. And so their their profile is there, and they're waiting for people to reach out to them. And really what I try to teach is the whole notion about being proactive and going after people, connecting with people, sending them personalized invitations that really get them excited about wanting to connect with you. So with that said, give me I'm going to start with you, Kate, if you could give me a sense of what you think, what's been some of your experience with LinkedIn recently, and And, how do you see it going forward?
Great question. I haven't loved my LinkedIn feels scary. Like I feel good with all of the other social media, like a tweet, Instagram, great. Like got that no problem. But LinkedIn feels obviously more professional. So you want to make sure that you're like presenting yourself in a professional way. So like did I send the right thing? Is my punctuation correct? Does this person care who I am? Like, do they care if I looked at their profile? Like, and I think some of that stuff, for me being, I guess, in social media, like I'm good with it. I'm trying to adjust to LinkedIn just because it is a great spot to network, obviously. And people do want to help. But I think getting over the fear of doing it correctly, I guess, because I think if you ask for help, regardless, people are going to want to help, even if you didn't spell everything correctly or you called someone the wrong name, which I did do. So,
That was like one of the first ones, but you know what? They didn't care. You're right. I mean, look,
nope.
that's the other thing, and it's something that people talk about all the time. People love stories of, they don't like to always hear about the person that started a company and made $1 bajillion and exited and was amazing. They like to hear the ups and the downs and the challenges, but how we all came out of those challenges and so forth. So, we've all, oh my God, I've made so many of those mistakes and so forth. And at the end of the day, no one necessarily cares as much as we do. We panic when that happens, but they don't necessarily care. But thanks for that. And Tom, how about you in regards to your experiences with LinkedIn and some of the other platforms, and what have you found to be the sort of the most useful for you?
Just like in the chat, Matt said, I don't think there is a right way, but I think it's a wrong way. So basically just getting it. That's the first step, just creating one, because you can say this, say that, but you're not going to go anywhere without doing and putting whatever into action. So just creating one and then cleaning up. We did a project called Cleaning Up Your Digital Dirt. So like it's different from Twitter. It is like you can't just say anything and just be reckless on LinkedIn. It is more so of a professional site. So just whatever your career goals are, post and follow those type of people. Follow the institutions that you might want to be at one day, and just see what other people are doing that done it before you, and just kind of mimic that. Find mentors on there. And what I did with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say social media, like for our student athletes, like we make sure that we follow them because they will put up some stuff where you're like, oh, wow, that is not appropriate, and why is this not appropriate? I think in teaching them, we don't need to see every photo of you like at the pool if alumni and donors are following you, like making sure that they are curating their image appropriately, because people screen capture stuff as soon as it's up.
All right.
They do that? Kate, what the heck?
I don't do that.
I know you don't, but anyways. How about you, Jason? What's been your experience with social media in general, and have you been using LinkedIn at all? And tell me about that.
Yeah, and I think one story for me with LinkedIn wasn't necessarily benefiting me personally as much, but the department, and that was with the networking nights that I mentioned at GCU. I got to Phoenix and noticed that I had a lot of sports management majors in my student caseload, and so I talked to them a lot about, look, there are great sports management programs at Florida State and Indiana and New Mexico, but like we're in Phoenix, we've got the Diamondbacks and the Suns and the Coyotes and the Cardinals and PGA golf and spring training. You need to take advantage of that. And so I started talking about informational interviews and things of that nature. Well, I got on LinkedIn one night and I just typed in Arizona Diamondbacks. And the first two people who popped up, I had like 8 to 10 connections in common with. One who had graduated from USF, she did marketing for the Diamondbacks, and another a guy who played football at Wyoming and did suite sales or corporate sales or some group sales, something like that. And I just reached out to them and said, hey, would you be willing to be a resource for our student athletes who are sports management majors? Hey, we have these people in connection, in common with our connections. And we just kind of all started talking. We said, hey, let's do these networking nights. I said, yeah, we did those at USF. Let's get that together. They brought on like anywhere from 10 to 15 other employees from the Diamondbacks. And then we started expanding that to the Suns and to the Coyotes and then to Banner Health and the Scottsdale Police Department. We ended up with like 27 different companies there. Wow. And it all started really with me reaching out on LinkedIn and doing that search and finding, oh, I've got a lot of connections in common with these people. And, so that's been a big thing for me. And just kind of keeping track of people in our field. And if, okay, they just took a new job somewhere, shoot them a message and hey, congrats. And that goes a long way in building that network and those connections. And, just having people to reach out to for advice. And it might not be a big thing, but maybe it adds up and it becomes a big thing later on in terms of people thinking of you. And I think the guy's name is Keith Ferrazzi or something like that. He wrote a book called Never Eat Alone, and he calls them pings and try to ping people every day. And it could be a quick text message or an email or a LinkedIn message. And so I think that's a valuable thing too, is kind of keeping track of where people are and congratulating them when they do something great or get a new position or get a promotion.
That was fantastic, Jason. And just real quickly before I forget, on the right side of your screen, you'll see it says chat participants Q&A. If you have any questions at all for any of my panelists or myself, please, I encourage you to put them in there. You guys are you're fantastic. Really a world of knowledge. Sorry. One of the things that you mentioned a second ago, Jason, was, the whole point of, the connections, but also one thing I want to bring up is that sometimes a student or student athlete is concerned about, well, gee, what do I possibly have that I can offer somebody else that, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old, a 30, whatever, doesn't matter. And what I like to say is that actually, and Laura, you mentioned this about alumni, when you talk to a fellow alum, they love to be mentors. They love to give advice. They love to give help. It's something that, look, I had a fantastic experience where I went to college. I loved it there. Academics, maybe not so much, but everything I did there was, I really look back fondly on that experience, and I miss it, right? And I've been, gone from school for many, many years. And so if anybody from my school reaches out and says, hey, would love to ask you a question, can I get your advice? I will absolutely do it. And I've found that it almost doesn't matter what school you went to, what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think you'll find that fellow alums will almost always drop what they're doing to an extent and be more than happy to have a phone call with you. That's, and look, Jason, you've worked at 47 different schools so far. So we're 48 maybe?
48, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I think that you're going to find that, everybody's going to find that if we can give the advice to the current student athletes or current students, say, look, please use LinkedIn, go to the school page and look at the alums who either work in a city you want to be in or work for a company you want to work for, and just start having conversations. Just have conversations and share the knowledge. That's going to be a lot better than sort of, again, waiting to be found on there. You have to be a little bit more on the prowl a little bit. What do you think of that, Tommy?
I think that's awesome because, we all, lifetime learners, we take that step and do that. It's just getting student athletes to actually do it is very tough sometimes. And a lot of time, unfortunately, we try to, but coaches have a big play in that because in our roles, we don't necessarily see the student athletes every single day for hours at a time, but coaches do. So just we have to kind of train and let our coaches know that this is a high importance too, other than outside of just winning games. Because I know sometimes coaches can get, oh, we have to win this game and I have to get this recruit versus focusing on life after college is going to embed that athlete that, okay, you care about me as a person too. I want to play better. I want to perform better now. Because some coaches do get stuck in the mentality of play, practice, and winning games, which hurts the athlete too. So just having that coach buy-in is very important.
That was fabulous. And Tommy, I think that Kate, you were talking earlier about just how you guys prepared the student athletes almost like from the very start. It's it's play, win, etc. But it's also preparation. It's also other interests. It's you're looking at every student athlete as a whole and not just as the dribbling the basketball. And I think that's fantastic. We have a couple quick questions here that I want to make sure everybody has a chance to answer. So, Kate, I'm going to start with you with Jessica's question. She says, when was a time you're really proud of when was a time that you're really proud of your impact on a student athlete? Maybe a time that when they took and applied your advice with some results.
That feels like a tough question. I think I don't know if I have a specific instance, but I know that when we have freshmen that come in and they're like, what do I want to do with my life? And I might be answering a second question in the Q&A, but we encourage them to explore different opportunities. Like some might come in and say, hey, I want to be a bio major and I want to be a doctor. I want to do all this stuff. And then they get into their first bio class and they're like, wow, this really sucks. And I don't want to be in lab all day long. And so it's like, okay, well, what else is, exciting to you? And, they might not know. So it's like, let's try an art class. Let's try, something else and try and get them involved in different things early on so that they can see where maybe their path will take them. And so I think when we've had players that have come in with that existential question, which I didn't know how to answer at 18, I wish I could have, been given a little bit more direction instead of just being like business major. I think when our players, are able to identify something outside of the norm that they have, thought that they wanted has really been impactful.
That's great. Jason?
Yeah, I think about students who maybe started out struggling a little bit academically, or maybe they didn't take it as seriously. And then by the time they're junior or senior, they have a very different take on that. And I'm thinking of a baseball player at GCU who, as a freshman, was kind of a pain because didn't really do well academically, didn't show a lot of effort. And then I think the combination of me and especially our learning specialist really did a great job with him. But his attitude changed. Our meetings, instead of being 15 minutes, would go 45 minutes to an hour sometimes. And he'd look at my bookshelf and say, "Oh, that book looks cool. What's that about?" And we have a conversation about that. I'd be like, I was listening to this podcast, or my dad gave me this book, and I've been reading that, and just a lot more into conversations like that, and talking about what he wanted to do in the future. He's actually coaching college baseball now. He's an assistant coach at the D1 level, and it's pretty cool to see. And I had a football player at South Florida who didn't have great grades, but put forth the effort, did a lot of good things, played in the NFL. And actually, he was playing in a playoff game in Arizona my first year there, and got me a ticket to the game. We hung out the night before, and I drove him back to the hotel. And he's like, "Hey, hold on a minute, I've got to run up to my room." He comes back, and he had a signed football with his team, and he's just like, "Hey, thanks for having an integral impact on my success." And he was actually his team's Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year nominee that year. So that's pretty cool to see that. And he might have done that without my impact or anything, but it was still kind of cool to see that, and to know that I at least played a small part in his journey.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tom, tell me a little bit about some of the work that you're doing now in terms of, how are you impacting these student athletes? Is there one that stands out where they someone said, they listened to what you had to say, and then they
I'm not going to say like, I had a crazy impact on somebody. I'm not sure, but all I know is that I just hope to give a different perspective that they didn't have before, and try to be of some sort of help in any way and sort of fashion. So I wouldn't say like necessarily I haven't like Jason guy, but just basically whenever I interact with a student athlete, just basically give them a new perspective and just see where that goes. Just the conversations of being genuine, being myself, and not being fake or not being like somebody else. To be myself with them and just be a realist.
That's really good. I've noticed in some of the chat going on that people are talking about, would they recommend public speaking courses and anything involving public speaking? And I think we all would say absolutely. Any experience that you can have in front of people, in front of a camera, in front of anything, it's just so important for the rest of your career, your life, and so forth. There's so many times where it becomes something very important. One of the things that I did a few years ago was I started to take I joined Toastmasters International, which is a nationwide club of public speaking. And it's interesting because my very first speech, I don't remember what it was about, but I was nervous as all heck. And, what they do is you give your speech, and then afterwards, everybody hands like their own handwritten sort of criticism or so forth, or whatever input. And it turned out that when I gave my speech, I was pacing so much. I was back and forth that people were saying they didn't even listen to me because they were wondering if I was going to walk off the stage or something. So after that, I kept on thinking, concrete boots, don't move, don't move. But there's so many benefits to becoming a better public speaker. One of the things that I've noticed with some younger folks is they do say a lot of filler words, like and ah and so forth. And I still do a little bit of that, and I try to work on it because I self-recognize sometimes that I'm saying certain filler words too much. So I think public speaking courses at school, or if there's a club or whatever it might be, is really important.
And I agree with that, but as a freshman that got thrown into public speaking with like upper level, I was petrified. I don't even remember a single thing that I did. And like couple of our players will come in and they'll be like, we have public speaking, I don't know what to talk about, da, da, da. I think that, trying to get them like into basic level classes and getting them comfortable with their peers first before just throwing them into the deep end, because I know for me, like,
Yeah.
I completely just blacked out during that. I have no idea what I learned in public speaking.
Well, maybe it's something that to not throw. I agree with you. I think that maybe that's something that you encourage juniors and seniors to jump into once they've assimilated into a collegiate environment. I think it's great though. But I think by the way, Kate, I believe you probably do remember some of the stuff. It's just back there somewhere. No.
I think small group communication is another great class to take too. That's probably my favorite undergrad class, and the students I've had who have taken a class similar to that at the 47 or 48 schools I've been at have also really sung the praises of that, and I think that can help people be a better teammate and just overall communicators. So that's another big one. I think in addition to public speaking would be any type of small group communication or leadership team building type class.
I agree with Kate. Like my freshman year of college, I was one of those student athletes that was like horrified, like I was scared, like to public speak. But now it's easy, just practicing. Which I in high school they didn't really put me in positions to actually lead discussions and different things like that. I think that's important at an early age. So what I do with my SAT group, my Student Athlete Advisor Committee, on a smaller scale, small groups, I try to let them like say your answers out loud, stand up, little things like that slowly, because I'm not like actually teaching like a speech class or anything like that. So I put them in positions to where, okay, you have to lead this discussion. You're doing this, you're the team captain, roles, different mock interviews and different things like that. So I do put my athletes in situations like that for public speaking. I think it's very important for them to actually lead discussions.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because it actually reminds me of something else. I'm sure we've all been at events where the speakers will do their speaking, and then at the end, people will say, "Well, does anybody have a question out there?" And there's usually a pause, and everyone's looking around, and then finally someone raises their hand. And one thing I heard somewhere was that everybody remembers the first person that asks a question. It's somehow it's something in the brain or whatever, that if someone is the first one and they say blah 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 blah, that the speakers remember you and they're relieved. They're like, oh, thank God that she asked that question, because now we can have a Q&A. So if you're at an event, this is just a separate random tip, but I heard this and I was really fascinated about it. Really try to be prepared at that event with a question that, if you can get over the nerves of being that person in the crowd that asks the question, it will pay off in major dividends. So that's just a quick little tip for y'all.
And we always talk to our players about, like, if you have the question, someone else also probably has the question. So, like, it's that fear of, like, I want to know, but I'm not going to ask anybody. And then, just making sure that you're comfortable enough to do it because you're not the only one.
I like that. It's true. That's great. Well, listen, you've all been fantastic. Tommy, you're going to pop back in here in a second. But I'm going to start with you, Jason. If someone wants to reach out to you directly and communicate with you, what's the best way to do it?
LinkedIn, I got that in my profile. My email address is jfrank, JFRANK @csu.edu. There you go, Thomas. I'll just put mine in there. Yeah, so that would be the best way.
Excellent. Tommy, that's yours. Great. Love it. And Kate, all of you have been fantastic. You're fantastic resources. And I encourage everybody here and anybody watching and listening out there to reach out to all three of you. I think you all give such fantastic advice and your great perspectives. And you've all had different experiences that have gotten you to this point. And I'm happy that you were here, but I'm also really happy that the three of you are involved in one way or another with really impacting student athletes and really helping them make that transition. If they're continuing in the sport, great. But if they're continuing on to graduate and to go into business, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate all of you tremendously. You're all fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.